Welcome. I'm Dr. Jamie Mathias of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees, also Executive Director of MASBA, the Mexican American School Boards Association. Welcome to this conversation that's co-sponsored by Leadership ISD, MASBA, the Mexican American School Boards Association, and the Texas Caucus of Black School Board Members. As our friends from throughout the state begin to log in, I'd like to provide a brief overview of our time together today for this conversation. Before that, I'd like to draw your attention to a few details concerning this GoToWebinar platform. If you'd like to raise your hand to be acknowledged to speak, simply press the raise hand button, which looks like a hand with an up arrow. I'll give you a moment to find the raise hand button. If you'd like to try it now, you can practice raising your hand and lowering your hand. Also, you can type your questions into the questions tab. I'll give you a moment to find the questions tab. We encourage conversation through the chat tab, so take a moment to find the chat tab. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce the Vice President of the Mexican American School Boards Association. She serves on the Board of Trustees of the Houston ISD. Welcome, Holly Maria Flynn Villaseca.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Jamie, and thank you to all of the panelists who are joining us from all across the state of Texas today, and to everybody that's joining in and tuning in. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to lunch and learn with us. We're in week 3 of our collaborative work with Leadership ISD and the Black Caucus, bringing together leaders from across the state to talk a little bit about what they're going through. We have different topics, but today we have some superintendents and a school board member to join a little bit to provide us with an overview on what it is that they're doing to meet the specific needs of their respective communities and school districts. And we have several talented folks here that are really working tirelessly to navigate this challenging COVID-19 time. And so what we're going to do today, since we have several panelists, this is the most panelists we've had in one of these webinars, we're going to have the opportunity to give each one of you 3 to 5 minutes to introduce yourself, and then also talk a little bit more about what you're doing specifically that might be a little bit innovative or unique to address the needs in your school districts during this COVID-19 crisis moment that may very well become the new normal for us. And so I'm going to go ahead and first pass off the torch to Dr. Marta Salazar Zamora, who's the superintendent of Tomball ISD.
Thank you so much, Holly. I appreciate that. So much like all of the panelists on the panel here today, we are, like everybody, discovering the new norm during this unprecedented times where we very, very quickly turned a traditional brick and mortar instructional setting into a remote learning platform that was accessible to students. And when I say students, to all students, and that would continue their learning for what indefinite period of time, because of course when this first started we were very unsure until recently when the governor made the statewide decision. All of us were deciding at different times what might be appropriate for our different communities. So of course the main discussion being remote learning and ensuring that when we say all students, that all students had access. And that of course brings to mind ensuring equity and access for all students. Not all students have parents at home that have the ability to sit with them and work with them through instruction, and not all of them even had the tools for instruction. So like many other districts I know will share, I don't know if this is unique, but what we did initially, within probably by week 2, started to deploy Chromebooks and other devices, whether that included a hotspot or what we now have, which are Park and Learns. So at several of our campuses, there's a very large sign that says anyone in the community can come up into the parking lot and they can get access to the internet if they don't have that at home. The other group of students that we in Tomball were very, very specific to ensure was accessible and inclusive remote learning environment for our SPED kids, because this is a group of students who perhaps needed a little bit more additional at-home instruction. So we have the weekly communication, we have a help desk, a specific website, and have developed a behavior on-demand YouTube channel that I shared with the state recently with Commissioner Mike Morath. Along with the learning piece, we, like I believe every other panelist will talk more about, started the distribution of meals. So we provide breakfast and lunch for students for 5 days. It's a 1-day distribution, but it is meals for 5 days. And now are focusing more on the social emotional piece, because we know families, I know what it's like at my home, and I don't have young children that I'm trying to be parent and teacher to as well, plus do a job. So worrying about maybe the emotional effect of students not being able to go back to their learning environment, missing their friends, missing their teachers, as well as the adults in the families. We're trying to do more in the remote social emotional, whether that's through teletherapy that we had started before, but we've included much more because of the demand, and then just having more outreach opportunities for people who might be in need of that. So I want to give time for the other panelists, but I would say we initially deployed the remote learning platform in various ways to include all students. We are currently at 98% activity. We have 2%, which is even if it's just 2 students, it's not okay. So we continue to find ways to reach out to the few students who have not been logging in regularly. We have also looked at the grading system in a different way, which I think is super important when we talk about equity for all students and ensuring that we do still have a grading system, but it does have grace before grades. I'll give time for other panelists because I know we all have.
But keep hustling on our end, and however this plays out. No, I'm a team player. I really am. So I'm excited of any move we all decide to make together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zamora. We really appreciate your insight. Why don't we go ahead and turn it to Dr. Kent Paredes Scribner from Fort Worth ISD, Superintendent of Fort Worth ISD.
Well, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. I think it's great for us to focus on the implementation of these changes. We like everyone else is focused on the on 3 basic things: standing up our virtual classrooms, virtual learning. That is only second to really meeting the students' basic needs in food security, social emotional support. We know this is a difficult time for our students and our families. It's a high stress scenario. We want to make sure that we're reaching out and making contact with our students on a regular basis. I know our teachers have been encouraged to do so, and in many cases, we've learned a lot about what those needs are for our students. And then similar to Dr. Zamora, with regard to the hardware and infrastructure disparities that exist in our community, I think that's common through most urban environments, and probably common throughout the entire state. But it really shines a light on the disparities, not only in terms of the healthcare, but also the digital divide. What we've told our philanthropic community is that this concept of getting thousands of hotspots or laptops, those are short-term solutions. That's going to help us in the next 2 weeks, 2 months. What we really want to focus on is, I've told them I don't want any more hotspots. What we want is Wi-Fi towers in our areas of economic disadvantage. We don't want laptops. We want appropriately funded schools. So I think this is a great opportunity, again, under the context of not letting a good crisis go to waste. It's an opportunity for us to really start the equity conversation community-wide around the need to invest in our students, to invest in our communities, and address those basic needs, whether it be food insecurity, social and emotional support, or the digital divide.
Absolutely. As we really are faced with all these inequities that are magnified right now. So being able to manage a crisis on a short-term basis, but also think strategically what we need to do as a broader community to address these inequities. I really do appreciate your comments, Dr. Scribner. Thank you so much. Speaking of cell phone towers, I would like to pass over the mic to Dr. Estrada from the Lockhart ISD.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to chime in there. Before we talk about towers, I do want to talk, as Dr. Scribner mentioned, ensuring that our kids are fed and that we do everything possible to make sure before we get to the teaching and learning. Now that's extremely important, but we want to make sure that our kids were fed and taken care of, getting the social emotional support as well. So we did start implementing breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we do that every day, Monday through Friday. We started a transportation route. We have well over 250 route stops that we go to on buses. So we're delivering food, and that's actually where we're finding we're giving the most meals. In a school district with about 6,200 students, we're giving well over 10,000 meals every single day. So the need is great, and we're providing that so that our kids ensure that they're well fed. In terms of the towers, I agree that, and we evaluated, do we get hotspots? We have hotspots, we have those types of things. Being in a rural county, well over 30% of our county doesn't have access to any service provider. So even if we were to give them a hotspot, regardless if it's Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, it doesn't exist there. So there's no connectivity for even a hotspot to connect to, and which is the case in many rural communities. So we figured out a way, and we've been looking at this for about 2 years of, how do we ensure that our community, our school district is more resilient. Of course, we would have never known that this crisis would happen. But we were planning for more things that we have experienced, whether that's floods, other shorter term delays. But so we have purchased internet towers. Actually, this week we're starting construction. We'll have 7 around our county that will cover all 300 square miles. And we've been able to do that. If anyone has any questions, I can share more about the vendor and things like that. But we've talked to a lot of different folks and finally found someone who saw the value in building infrastructure in our county and partnering with us, so that, of course, it's good for them because they have an opportunity to get more customers and things. But it's good for the district because now we're able to provide internet access that'll be on our network, our bandwidth, for free to all of our students and our staff who live in some of the rural parts of the county. But even if they live in city proper of Lockhart, we'll be able to provide that for free for them, which we think is a huge game changer in terms of ensuring that our community is more resilient for times of crisis, but also when times are going well as well, because our kids can be connected. When we start talking about going one-to-one, now we have the infrastructure that allows us to ensure that kids have access at home when they're not at school, which makes the one-to-one plan much more effective, which we've been planning for about 4 years now. So, again, this crisis certainly lit a fire to go ahead and make some very bold decisions and to figure out how to make it work for our kids and our families. But it's also part of a longer strategic plan to address equity issues in our district.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your comments on sort of relating this to something that you already had in the works as far as a one-on-one plan, and just really taking things up and lighting that fire so that you can make it happen during this time of need. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Cindy Anderson, who's not far down the road in Austin ISD, who's a board member. Cindy.
Thank you. I'm really excited to hear what's happening in Lockhart, because we too have been looking for an alternate solution to just hotspots, because that doesn't in any way, shape, or form really bridge the gap. We've been, temporarily using our buses, about 110 out of our fleet of 500, to act as mobile hotspots. And, we're using them not just at campuses, but at housing complexes, apartment complexes, and other areas where we do show a significant gap. We've also been able to increase our technology access. I think now all students in grades 3 through 12 have access to one-to-one technology via Chromebooks. We have kind of a two-pronged approach, though, because we know that technology doesn't reach all kids. So we've also been delivering hands-on learning materials, about 60,000 packets so far across 37 schools in K through 8. That participation rate is about 60%. So we're trying to provide multiple options in order to best meet all students' needs. We've also implemented some interesting things. We use a Let's Talk platform to field questions on a wide variety of options and topics for families. We've got a bilingual help desk. We've got an AISD computer curbside program where you can switch out technology that you're having difficulty with or pick up a charger if you've lost yours. And we're just getting ready to kick off a new touchless repair center that services and maintains computers that starts tomorrow. Something else I wanted to mention, and I forget who it was originally, maybe it was Dr. Scribner, talking about community partnerships. We've had some pretty incredible partners in the community step forward. One of them locally here being KLRU, which is our PBS channel. We've got a new partnership starting today, actually, where in addition to sort of their regular programming, they're going to supplement our curriculum with additional off-campus resources for students, and it's sort of segmented by hours. So 6 to 8 a.m. is pre-K through 3rd, 8 to 11 is 4th and 5th, and 11 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. is students in grades 6 through 12. And so we really appreciate that additional supplemental curricular approach as well as enrichment for kids. It's especially for those that don't currently have access to a device, but to have some other mechanism of delivering some basis of instruction and hands-on learning activities. We too are very concerned about our families' social and emotional health because I think as those who have spoken before me have said, if students are not in a place where they can learn, they've got food insecurity, housing insecurity, there's addiction in the house and increased incidences of domestic violence and things like that, we have to be able to support them holistically in order to get them prepared to learn. And so we're continuing online service through our mental health clinics. The Vita Health Clinics is our partner, which has always been accessible to our students, our families, and our staff. And so we're hoping that we can continue to increase the opportunities that we have to provide additional services to our families. There's still a huge need for other wraparound services in coordination with other partners like the local food bank. I mean, even though we've served, I think as of the 19th, 307,478 meals, and we're resuming weekend service, we're still only able to do breakfast and lunch. And with a majority minority district and majority low SES district, and the changes in hours, service hours for local grocery stores, it's a huge hardship for families being able to access food. So, we've got a number of other partners that are even using our school sites to supplement that, and we really can't thank them enough. And then I'll turn it over to the next person for now. Thank you.
Thank you again, Cindy. We really appreciate your leadership during this time too. Trustee to trustee, I appreciate the update. And I know that Austin ISD has really been on the front lines and on the cusp and on the background services work because we've followed along some of the best practices in HISD. Let's go ahead and go down to the Valley. We have Dr. Rudy Treviño, Chief Academic Officer, FAR San Juan Alamo.
Yes, it looks like I'm battling the virtual technology type challenges myself. I don't think you can see me, but I'm here. And I'll piggyback on some of the comments that were being made. I think it's awesome to hear a statewide concerted effort on social emotional learning components. I tell you, as a moderator and trustee in Houston ISD, we can attest to the fact that after Harvey, we had some really tough lessons learned in the city of Houston. And in the Valley, it's the same thing. And throughout the state, we're all dealing with the same thing right now. It's how do we react to the challenges of the fact that COVID-19 is an equal opportunity type thing, right? It's going to impact all of our students, from the most impoverished of families to perhaps the families that had a great quality of life that are going to have to make some changes as family members are unemployed and things of that nature. And it also ranges for our teachers. And what are we doing to be able to support our teachers? So like many of you, we're creating a plan that is a concerted effort and holistic approach to providing all the wraparound services and the SEL support systems to all of our teachers and staff, as well as beginning by focusing on our students. And I won't take too much of the time since you can't see me, but I'll take a point of privilege to say, since it's National Librarians Week, in PSJA, all of our librarians are Google Classroom certified, and they have served as added resources into our approach to supporting our students with the virtual challenges we're having. And it's been great to see them, do some phenomenal work as it pertains to gathering My On Top celebrations and many other celebrations that are virtual.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was voice, Dr. Carino, and we appreciate recognizing the librarians that are out there supporting our schools, and that you're able to work, that they're all Google certified and they're able to participate and reach out to students in this virtual manner. So we really do appreciate some of those insights as well. Last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Superintendent from El Paso ISD, Juan Cabrera. Need your audio.
Oh, is that better? Can you hear me now? Okay. I did not get the dress code, so I'm very casual, sitting outside my backyard, trying to move around like everybody. We all have challenges. I've got 2 college kids at home. My wife's working for a neighboring school district, and I've got a 9th grader. So we kind of shift around the whole house, trying to get different space, and it sure is challenging. Thanks to all the colleagues and for all the ideas you shared. Thanks for helping me or let me participate. First and foremost, I think, on multiple fronts as superintendent and working with our trustees, just trying to understand, it's almost like you got to look at the hierarchy of needs. And as Dr. Scribner said, first and foremost, it's the food insecurity, it's the health and safety, the well-being. One of the first things we did, this was going back to March 12th, is we started calling every student. We put a list in front of every teacher to call every student. And then at the same time, we reached out to the United Way and immediately started partnering and thinking about how do we do the outreach for that group of kids that we can't find. And we have about 60,000 kids. We pretty quickly contacted about 45,000 of them that said they were going to be available for online education. And now the goal has been to whittle down that list from, it was about 17,000. We're probably down to about 8,000. We also have an issue with a lot of our students, and I know this is true for a lot of urban districts, even if you're not on the border. Here on the border, we have a lot of kids that might have gone to Mexico or that actually come back and forth from Mexico, maybe between families. So we're trying to identify those children, and even if they're not going to be in El Paso, if we can't get them, trying to just make sure they're okay. And this last part of it, in trying to keep our own staff safe, because we've got 50 meal locations that are working 3 days a week. And then we've got a lot of the technology outreach in terms of support and service that my colleagues mentioned. So now, we don't want to force students, we don't want to force teachers to go out to schools or to homes. So we're working with local nonprofits. United Way has offered up AmeriCorps kids and other volunteers that are willing to do that. So as we whittle down our list of who are the students that have not been contacted yet for whatever reason, and we all know this, and this is maybe something that could be a change as a result. We know that in school districts, and it's not necessarily our fault, we don't do a good job of getting the last current address because our families move so much, especially our families of poverty. And I know for a fact there are a lot of families that'll move 2 or 3 times before they update their address, and that only happens because something might have occurred that required them to come in and update their address, not because they were proactive about it. So we're hoping that, last known email or phone number is something that gets us to most families, but the numbers show that we still have a lot of kids that we have not contacted. So our big focus now, from March 12th until about the beginning of April, it was to stand up our virtual school, identify every student we could, and then begin to close those gaps and find those kids. And as we found the kids, is everything going well? Do you have the ability to go online? If you don't, we're going to get you some other resources that aren't online. So it's just really a very investigative process. And I told my team, because at first I had a lot of pushback saying, well, this is going, far outside the academic scope. And I told them, I said, we're going to have to switch, sort of wear 2 hats. I see us as a social services agency, as we are in a lot of these school districts, in addition to the academic requirements that we are charged to do by the state, right? Charged to meet by the state. So we actually have really tried to shift the culture to, it's not just about academics, it's about the health and safety and well-being of our students and staff. And as we made that shift, I've noticed people have come and been a lot more creative about ideas and outreach and what else we can do outside of the academics. The same premise that we always, stand for in urban districts, which is if kids aren't safe, healthy, fed, they're not going to be able to learn. That doesn't go away. In fact, that's probably of greater importance now than it would have been in the brick and mortar days. So we're trying to put a lot of emphasis around that. And what I've specifically done, I would encourage you, I'm sure a lot of you are doing this, but I noticed initially a lot of the projects were going to my principals, supervisors, teachers, counselors. So I've divided up the district now, and I've made it very clear at the cabinet level, nobody's allowed to give any projects to anybody touching kids. All our projects are going to our non-student facing staff, because we've got a lot of projects, all around setting up virtual, what's our virtual summer school going to look like? You can imagine graduations. We're talking about, this outreach program. We're working on a playbook. What does it look like in the fall? And are we ready to close a school within 24 hours and be up and teaching? We have a lot of other projects that support the work, but I'm making sure that nobody that faces students is running any project or involved in a project, because I don't want to distract them from working with kids. And as you think about it, and I'm sure I'd love to talk about this with my colleagues, when you start digging into the work deeper, it seems like every layer of the onion you peel, you find another issue that you hadn't thought of in March, right? Another issue. It seems like every 2 or 3 days we cover another issue that we hadn't thought of a couple of weeks ago. And that's challenging, because that means that I don't want to stop digging, because I know that there's more need out there that we probably still haven't even touched on yet. And just one last thing I'd like to mention, at least what we're trying to do in El Paso, and I've had to do this with my team to make it clear. It seemed like, we spent 2 or 3 weeks really working hard to try to stand up a full-time virtual school in addition to the paper support. And then I sort of felt a lull after the second week of school, where it was almost like, we had climbed this mountain, and then we got to the other side of it. And I felt, how you can feel as a leader, if you're close to the organization, you can feel the way the team's moving, the energy. And I had to have a wake-up call in our third week and say, guys, all we really did was open the school building. It's the equivalent of opening the school building. I want to talk about quality, continuity, increasing the rigor. We're actually putting together some webinars where our best teachers that are the most creative are teaching other teachers, because I felt like we were sort of going to back into the end of the year, and we still have 5 weeks left. I said, guys, we can't just sort of, crawl across the finish line. I want to go into the finish line getting better, improving the quality of our virtual school, improving our outreach, improving our connection, improving our engagement. And let's be ready to start summer school the week after. And God forbid, if we're in this situation in the fall, we're stepping into that and continually increasing our rigor and quality, not just sort of backing into it and hoping we get back to brick and mortar soon.
Thank you so much, Juan, for really emphasizing the importance, recognizing that we need to provide, I guess you could say, essential services and making sure our kids are being fed, right? That's just one of the things that we do when we're addressing the whole child, but really, what does that mean? How do you get the food out to the students? How do you deliver on trying to make sure that they are getting their SEL, supports, needs met, that they're getting the nutrition that they need, that they have the technology in place, that they'll be able to take in the learning, and some of the innovative collaborative partnerships that you have with the United Way and other nonprofits in the community. I appreciate the investigative process that you said, that it really takes a lot to try to figure out what are the next steps, how do you reach out to the students, what are the next steps, and making sure that you're able to communicate, to be able to stand up the school, to be able to get better at what you're doing every day. I appreciate those comments. So we made it to the halfway mark in our conversation today. Usually the second part of our conversation, we open it up to the floor for any participants to ask some questions of the participants that are joining. And so with this webinar platform, we have everybody on mute who's not a panelist, and you have to unmute yourself. So you need to raise your hand or put into the comment box that you would like to speak. And then you have to unmute yourself. We unmute you on this end, and then you unmute yourself, and then you're able to speak. I do just want to remind everybody that we've heard from 6 panelists today, superintendents and a school board member, from Tomball ISD, Lockhart ISD, Fort Worth ISD, El Paso ISD, Austin ISD, and FAR San Juan Alamo. All right, so if you have any questions related to anything that you've talked about or any ideas, please go ahead and raise your hand. And if not, I have some additional questions of the panelists as well, so we'll be good to go. Okay, we have a question from Stan Paz. We have 2 questions from Stan. Stan, would you like to unmute yourself, please?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Well, thank you very much for this outstanding panel and the work that you all are doing and the excellent leadership that you're providing to us in Texas. My question was already addressed earlier by Dr. Salazar Zamora when she addressed the special needs population in Tomball. And of course, I have a particular interest in that since I have a granddaughter in El Paso who's benefited from those services as well. But I did want to ask about school closing. Some announcements have been made to close school the 15th of May, and I was wondering, are those dates flexible, or what dates are more common?
Well, the latest information that we received on Friday and the follow-up with the commissioner after that was that schools would remain closed through the school year. The conversation then pivoted to what happens for summer school, particularly for those students with special needs, for those students who require one-on-one contact in order to actually have an educational experience. Those students with severe special needs. The sense was that probably we would not be having, at least in the large urban centers, person-to-person instruction in June. We wanted to take a look at July, so perhaps summer school would be kind of a jump start program. And then to the point around special education, continuing services, I think many of us are going to be really moving toward the teletherapy for all related services, really working with our teachers to make direct contact with students and providing them that kind of support. We're all getting better at this every week, but we're really going to have to continue to continuously improve because some of the data that we've been looking at, I know that Juan and other in the Texas Urban Council are part of these conversations, is that there is the possibility that schools would reopen in August and September, but then may need to close again. So this perhaps is not going to be a one-time experience. It's going to be something that we're going to have to build into our new normal.
I'd like to add a little bit to that, Holly, if that's okay. Dr. Boss, I think that when the governor made the announcement, many of us throughout the state were making our way there, and we're pretty much ready to call that, but wanted to make sure there wouldn't be any potentially financial implications if we did that and the rest of our neighboring districts or others in the state did not. And so the decision was made by the governor, and of course, you know, we are looking at a virtual type summer school as well. But I think, as Dr. Scribner just mentioned, there's a lot of things we have to take away and learn, because this history may repeat itself, and we are being told that it likely will. So what are the great lessons learned from what we've done, the beauty of the experiences of what has gone well during a challenging time, very unprecedented time? What are the nuggets of gold that we can take and move forward, whether it's what we take forward into a traditional brick and mortar instruction or a future online remote learning? What are the things that have come out of this that our students continue to benefit from. Not just our special needs students, of course, but our gen ed population as well. I do think, though, throughout summer school and into the next year, we do have to continue to focus on our special needs students because of the fact that there is a lot of additional challenges when you look at accessible and inclusive remote learning for that population. And I know what we've done is increased our parent webinars. Been very, very proud of the fact that so many of our both parents have been able to be a part of an ARD meeting. Perhaps in the past, maybe one parent had to be at work, and we're getting more parents actually involved in the ARD process through our remote ARDs. And of course, as Dr. Scribner mentioned, what I had started off with, the teletherapy, telecounseling, continue with that as well. So lessons learned from what we're going through moving forward is just the only thing I would add to that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salazar Zamora. I'm going to take another one from the questions box, and then I know that we have a couple of hands raised. I'm going to go and pass over the mic to John Gatica. John, are you still on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. I see that you have a question in for our panelists.
Yeah, I was just had a couple of questions actually, but first of all, let me thank you for providing this information. I think it's valuable information that we can take with us to our local districts. But one of the questions I had was, what are some of the components that you feel need to be in place before we open our building doors? And then secondly, what are some of the specific challenges that you are foreseeing for the 2021 school year? And then lastly, what are we doing about the conflicted messages that we hear in the media about the COVID-19? Because, sometimes you hear one message, then you hear another, and what are we doing to bring all that together to send one specific message? And this is the message that we're sending out to our communities.
Which panelists would like to take that series of questions?
I'll take a stab at one of them and I'll turn it over to everyone else. I think it's going to be critically as important as preparing a unit plan, to prepare unit plans to address the non-academic needs that our families are going to walk in to our schools with. I heard the commissioner say the other day, we have to be ready for students and parents to show up to school when we do open, perhaps with gloves and masks, and that shook me up a little bit. And that we understand that as we all know, trauma can be delayed at times. We all experience trauma differently. We all deal with stress differently, and we all deal with change extremely different. So we need to be ready to address all the psychological and sociological needs that our parents from diverse backgrounds, as well as students, have as they walk into our schools. And that may just mean the way we greet each other, the socialization dynamic may change, and the interactions may completely change. But being aware to be able to anticipate what's going to happen when our students and families walk into school. They may not be the same, so I'll leave it at that.
We're going to see a summer slide of unprecedented level, a historic level. When you think about it, our students, the last day they attended school in a school building in Fort Worth ISD was on March the 6th. So if we don't open up until August, that will be 8 months, 8 months without school. So and of course that's going to disproportionately impact our most fragile students, our students in the greatest need. So I think from what we're doing, the school performance framework, really focusing on those students who are economically disadvantaged, those students who have historically struggled, and really roll out our focus and our resources with an equity lens to those students first.
I'd like to chime in, and I agree. And I think when do we open? What needs to happen? I mean, I think that's when it's safe to, when we can confidently understanding what it's safe, regardless of where the message is coming from, what news source it's coming from, whatever the science says, we can safely come back to school. That's when we come back to school. I think one of the challenges to the second question, a major challenge in terms of educational leaders, school board members, is how do we maintain that balance of supporting the SEL and supporting students and families and teachers, but also maintaining a high level of expectations, understanding, as Dr. Scribner mentioned, that our kids are developing gaps or building on gaps that maybe were already there. And as leaders, how do we continue and balance those high expectations that acknowledge, certainly the social emotional needs that are there, but also don't make excuses for them at the same time. I think that's going to be a difficult challenge for us to navigate.
Well, and I think it's interesting to note that, so many things have changed in the delivery of education and the support of our students, staff, and their families during this, that, practices are shifting and some of them may become the new normal. So we may see a different set of needs in terms of our staff's, job duties and responsibilities. I will say one of the sort of positive outcomes for us has been having much greater increased participation from our families and our community, whether it's, watching online board meetings or participating in principal selection processes. We've had huge gains in the number of folks that are able to participate because it's a lot more accessible. You don't have to physically show up at a meeting at a campus anymore. You don't have to physically come down to a board meeting. Or if you want to speak at a board meeting, you don't have to physically be there during what I kind of call the witching hour when you have kids and, homework, bedtime, dinner time. But I can tell you that some of our concerns as well for the 2021 school year, bridging the achievement gaps is going to be absolutely huge. Several have already sort of commented on the summer slide and, the lack of access that many of our families and students have, or the inability to focus on that because of trauma that families are experiencing. And, in many of the urban areas like ours, the rate of displacement has significantly increased. I think I forget which of you mentioned that, we're still identifying students. Students have moved multiple times. The unemployment rate in the Austin area is expected to hit 25% before this is all said and done, which is absolutely unprecedented. And Austin is already a huge challenge in terms of being affordable. And so, we're very concerned that families are going to be even more significantly displaced, that we're going to, we're already having difficulty in trying to track everybody down and make sure that they're okay, that they have access to education in some way, shape, or form, wherever they are. But, I think we're predicting, and this is just to me, not a, Superintendent Paul Cruz or the full board, but, because of that displacement increasing, I'm expecting to have lower enrollment, and enrollment that ideally, gains over the course of the school year. But I think there's also going to be ongoing concern about, the additional spread or a round 2 of COVID once everybody does resume back to physical environments. And so I think there's going to be a lot of fear, a lot of trepidation, and that's going to play out once we do eventually come back to a physical environment in terms of enrollment, and kind of another round and another need to check on everybody. Where are they? Are they still in the Austin area? How do we connect them to resources, et cetera? And so I think there's going to be massive changes, and many that we can't even anticipate yet, as much as we're trying to.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and take a few questions from the people that are raising their hands. We have Chloe Sykes. Chloe, can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for your insights. My name is Chloe Sykes. I'm the Deputy Director of Policy at IDRA. We're an educational nonprofit based in San Antonio. And we are trying to adjust our policy priorities essentially for the 87th legislative session. I'm interested in following up with what Dr. Scribner mentioned about connectivity and Wi-Fi connection just being of utmost importance, that hotspots as a Band-Aid just will not cut it. And so I'm interested from Dr. Scribner, but also others, what are those current conversations, and also how might organizations like IDRA, we focus research and policy and advocacy, how might we assist you in kind of advancing a statewide strategy around increasing Wi-Fi connectivity?
Well, I'll let the other panelists jump in here in a moment as well. I know that when HB 3 was passed, some of the narrative was that the state put itself in a much more responsible position, and then the question is whether or not they would live up to that responsibility. No one anticipated what has happened now with basically turning off the sales tax spigot for 3 months or longer. Gas and oil prices going through the floor. So we're looking at a very, very difficult next session. I think that what we're talking about here with infrastructure and supporting our schools, we're all going to have to pull together. Your organization, all of the school administrators, school board and more organizations, and have a united voice about the importance of investing in public schools.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there. Dr. Scribner, just hit the nail on the head earlier when he was talking about how we never waste a good crisis. And I really think, the issue here in my mind is that, the issue around connectivity and the digital divide that's grown deeper, right? They've really been exposed to this. That's almost a much lesser concern to me than just IDRA and others helping us on the funding issue. What I'm most worried about is not only the digital divide, but all of the other issues that take financial resources. I think we're hearing from the state that they're not going to impact in any way the second half of this biennium budget. But we better all get our briefcases together and all of our data together for January of 21. It is going to be a big fight. There is no doubt historically, if you look at what's happened in Texas, that legislators will not hesitate to make sure education takes the brunt of the budget challenge. So I think we need to be prepared for a big fight focused on financial resources at the big picture. And then obviously a lot of details that we'll have to sort out, which are harms that we've seen or issues that we've seen that have surfaced with COVID-19 quarantine, and especially impacting those in poverty and those the least of our children, if you will. So I'm just gearing up for a big financial fight and working along with Dr. Scribner, Dr. Zamora, and others on this call, and getting ready to spend. I've already told my wife I'm going to see where we are, but I'm going to plan to spend a couple of weeks a month in Austin in the spring, because I think this will be one of the most important sessions we've had in the last 20 or 30 years.
I would say also from a policy perspective on a national level, pushing for E-rate changes on what's allowable for E-rate is an important conversation to have and support, certainly school districts all across the nation to close that digital divide.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. Thank you, panelists, for responding. We have a question from fellow colleague and trustee from Houston ISD, Elizabeth Alba Santos. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Trustee Villaseca. So my question, well, first of all, I agree with, there's nothing that I disagree with any of the panelists. Thank you so much for your due diligence and focusing on what's right for our kids. My question is it's a twofold question. I would like to know the quality of data that you are collecting, going back to, I believe it was Superintendent Cabrera, who was saying having a hierarchy of needs that our kids are going to need. We talk about social emotional learning, social emotional needs, addressing the students holistically. What type of data are you collecting that helps not just, talk about food insecurity, but also address those needs? So for example, we have numbers, but what do those numbers prove? We can have a contact rate of 91%, and I'll speak for HISD, but that's not telling me anything. So what is your data telling you? What types of questions are you asking? What are you surveying the community and their needs, and how do you plan to address those needs, first of all? Second of all, I don't remember what trustee it was that asked the question about how a different leadership, both federal, state, local superintendents and trustees, what that leadership looks like when we have conflicting messages and or beliefs about COVID-19. If we were to start school again, what would social distancing look like? What measures would superintendents take in order to keep our kids safe? If we were to reopen sooner than we'd expect. So number one, what does your data look like that helps inform and move forward our new normal? And number two, what would social distancing look like for any superintendent on the panel?
Trustee Santos, thank you for that question. It's a great question. I think like any problem solving, it's a two-step process. And I just, part of why I said what I said is I encourage you, if we're not going out there trying to capture the data, then we're never going to solve the problem. So our idea initially was, again, not teachers, not principals, not APs, counselors, librarians, principals, none of those folks are doing this digging. Our initial calls were teachers reaching out. Every teacher got a list of names, which included all the students in our database. Once we had this subset of names that kids that didn't respond, then we put operational teams on them, and really some of our dropout recovery teams. We actually, I don't know if a lot of school districts have this, we have 20 social workers on staff. And we've had them on staff for about 5 years, and it's been hard to keep them on staff, but we wanted somebody to help focus on all these other non-academic issues that are necessary in order for a lot of our children to show up. So now that we're collecting that data, we're refining the data, we're continually digging, we are then working on different solutions, because then within that data of non-responsive students, let's just use that for a broad category, now it's different tactics to touch them and to support them based on their particular situation. So what we're going to find, I believe, and what we're seeing is that last group of kids, if you think about it, I almost look at this like a bell curve, right? We have 20% of our kids that are probably going to be disengaged just because they're so far ahead of the curve, maybe 10%. This is easy for them. They'll blow through the virtual. The vast majority of our kids are going to be engaged and they want to be in there. We need to focus on them. Then you've got this other group of kids, whether through homelessness or their personal situation or a myriad of number of issues, they're just not going to respond to virtual, right? And they may have some real safety and security issues. That group of kids, I don't know another way of doing it, at least in my opinion, open to any conversation, except digging one by one into their situation. And that's where I think we make that transition from an educational entity to a pure social services entity, almost like do the 80-20. Maybe now we're 20% social services. For those group of kids, we're 80% social services. Education is the fifth thing on the list for those kids. And we are, even though it's not our charge from the state, we are going to take that on at EPISD and go chase those kids. And the solutions, Trustee Santos, will be developed in the next few days and weeks as we identify each of those situations. I want to share that data with folks across the state, so hopefully some of the ideas and solutions we create can be utilized in other cities.
And I would like to add, based on the question that was asked by a previous person and Trustee Santos float. Hey there, Trustee Santos. I want to say something that's very important for all of us educational leaders. We need to do a much better job from here on at being able to analyze data as well as we were analyzing data for student outcomes, for objectives, for mastering certain content. We need to do the same type of technique for non-academic needs now. I mean, the impact to our communities, it's so massive that we need to use the same transferable skill set. And that we may not have the solution, or Trustee Santos, I may not be able to give you the solutions right now, but that's the mindset, that's the mind shift right now. It's the same concerted efforts that we had at grouping kids and analyzing data and sorting kids into different categories so that we identify their academic needs. We need to use the same skill sets for non-academic needs, because from domestic violence to sexual abuse to trauma as it pertains to having lost someone in their families, or someone in their family has been impacted by COVID-19, those are all traumas that are going to impact the academic achievement of our kids in the near future. So if we could at least have that same voice of saying this is equally as important as analyzing that data, at least you'll be able to start to shift the conversation.
Thank you so much for those responses. Thank you, Trustee Santos, also for the question that came in. I know that we're down to 4 minutes before we close out today. I'm going to check in with Jamie to see if we have time for one more question, or if we want to go ahead and start finalizing the closing out of our webinar.
We have 4 minutes, Trustee, so we could go into a lightning round here.
Okay, sounds good. I have a question from Paige Rander. Paige, can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
All right, there, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. So I was wondering if you could touch on what your districts did for grading and GPA. How did the community respond to your change? Did you go pass-fail for high school? And will your third 9 weeks grades be recorded to count towards your GPA? Thanks.
Yes, that's exactly what we did. Pass, fail, and end of the third 9 weeks was the GPA.
Yeah, in Austin, we sort of truncated the ranking and GPA at the end of the first semester. Second semester is pass and complete.
Same in Lockhart.
All right, thank you. How about Linda Griffin?
Trustee, are you with us?
We'll go ahead with Dr. Angela Valenzuela.
Thank you. Can
Trustee
you hear?
Griffin? Go for it. Trustee Griffin?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. Thank you all for spending your time. I have one question. What changes would you like to see as we move forward with so many changes occurring in how this team of 8 work? What would you, if you had a crystal ball, would you want trustees to do and change as we plot through this new territory?
I'll start with that. I would actually say, at least from Tomball ISD, it wouldn't actually be a change. It would be the continual support. So we've now had 3 meetings in this type of a platform, which was very different and I'm sure unique for everybody else on the panel. At least it was for Tomball. I love the fact that they continue to support the district and the decision, the leadership, the superintendent and my team, whether it's a grading policy, whether it's what we're doing for graduation, whether it's a decision about when to go back to school or not prior to the governor's decision. So I would love to see what we have in Tomball, and I know many other districts throughout the state, that cohesive team of 8 making important decisions moving forward for the betterment of the community, whether we are in a traditional brick and mortar instruction or virtual moving forward at some point.
And I agree, and I would say just the time and the speed that everything is moving, I think that it requires a lot of trust. And that's certainly that trust is something that I hope every school district team of 8 has, because there's just not a lot of time to typically go through a 2-month cycle of communicating things at board meetings. I mean, there's just things that happen so quickly. There has to be that communication and trust for the superintendents who make quick and good decisions.
Yeah, I would say the communication structures are different and require more flexibility. Our chief of staff has done a wonderful thing. In addition to our biweekly board meetings, we have weekly small group board trustee meetings. So in groups of 2 or 3, we can go over current events or important issues that require a deeper dive. So we'll do that once a week in addition to the board meetings, and that's actually been a great avenue for 2-way flow of information.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate all of your time, all of the participants for your engagement in the Q&A. I know that we've had a wonderful, wonderful conversation learning a little bit about what each district is doing specifically to address the pandemic during this time that may become the new normal. We really appreciate your leadership during this time, your honesty and sharing really what you've been doing. And I appreciate the closeout comments too on what we should be doing from the trustees that have chimed in too, what we can do to better support our superintendents and what we should expect on the legislative front in the next biennium. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much. Mil gracias.
Thank you.
Until next Monday.
Mazba.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.